Hey, fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Hope you're watching on SIFTD, and we hope you're a subscriber. If not, and you're watching on YouTube, thanks for the watch. You can reward me if you really appreciate this with a follow on Twitter. First question from SIFTD. They're all from SIFTD. From Crumpo. What a great name. Why hasn't the concept of shared universes we see with Marvel and DC films been replicated in video games? It's such a good question. You know, I mean, I think a better answer to your question, because it's actually a very thoughtful question that I've never thought about. I think this is what makes Marvel so successful. I think that, you know, and you probably now, everybody gets it who's ever seen a Marvel movie, but if you were a comic book fan, you knew that this was a universe. This wasn't planet Earth. This was some weird universe where there are people with superpowers, and it just made sense and is accepted. And I think that's part of what's Marvel's success, that they create their own universe, so they create their own rules. And so the hero and the villains can have whatever powers you want to balance out and make it interesting and have an interesting conclusion. Wow, it's such a good question. I don't know the answer. You know, you're right. It's something that you see in comic books, you see it in movies. You don't see it in games a lot. Apparently, Shane is aware of a game that I'd never heard of. That is a spin-off of Saints Row, but it's not really. It's like a parallel setting in the same universe, and you get Saints Row characters in it. But wow, great question. Something we should see, and we don't, and I agree. So what you really need to do is get hired by a publisher, be creative, and figure this out, because this is something that should happen. I like the idea. Never thought about it before, and it's one of those reasons you like Marvel. And again, I just never thought about it before. Next question from Lucky Wallace on the SIFTD site. I hope you're very lucky, Wallace. I remember when the average AAA game took around 8 hours to complete, yet now that it's starting to become the exception. Now, the truth is they still take 8 hours to complete unless you suck. So, Wallace, what's really going on is you're getting old and you suck. Do you think huge open world epics that take 50 to 100 hours to finish could start to hurt the industry, since the single purchase can keep consumers occupied way longer? Yeah, the answer is yes, games are getting longer. The single player campaigns are not. What the publishers have all done, developers have all done, is they try to keep you engaged more. We answered this on a prior episode, but they want to sell you more stuff. They want more microtransactions. So Grand Theft Auto never ends, because they want you to play Grand Theft Auto online for the rest of your life and spend $50 a month. And God bless them, they give you plenty to do. So there's just nothing wrong with that. Call of Duty wants you to buy every weapon, everything, every piece of ammo, every piece of, you know, armor, uniform you can buy, bacon wrap, voiceovers, whatever. They just want to keep you engaged. So Overwatch is killing it in microtransactions, all cosmetic, and you're not going to keep improving your uniform, your outfit, unless you're playing the game and you want people to see it, you know. And they're not going to sell you, you know, the dance on your grave emote unless you kill people. So they want to keep you engaged and give you more stuff to buy. So the truth is, yes, it has hurt the industry. We saw game sales decline from 2010 to 2014 by 50%, 5-0. But downloadable content and microtransactions made up about half of that. We're starting to see people spending more money yet again, but no, when games are just an 8-hour experience, everybody bought 3 or 4 a year. Now that they're a 100-hour experience, people buy 1, maybe 2. And you're seeing that with high ratios. So absolutely it hurts the industry. But the guy that sells you the 100-hour game loves it, because you want his game, because you get more for it. So, I mean, the answer is we have fewer publishers. This is why THQ and Midway don't exist anymore. They couldn't compete. And Activision and EA picked up some of their share, but not all of it. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great question. You want more, and they're giving you more. And when you get more for your same dollars, you're going to spend less. That totally makes sense. Julian Reed 77. I hope you're not 77 years old. If you are, you take more than 8 hours to finish a game. Julian Reed 77. You might even be 40, huh? Then half of 80. It seems like video game publishers are taking fewer risks than ever this generation. How much of the net profit accrued, listen to you, net profit accrued, you sound like a CFA or an MBA, from safer games and their DLC do you think is being reinvested in a new IP? It started in the last cycle. And the answer is that a PlayStation 1 game on average literally costs $1 or $2 million. A PlayStation 2 game on average costs about 20. A PlayStation 3 game on average costs about 60, and a PlayStation 4 game on average costs about 80. So we went from 2 to 80. Necessarily, they're going to take fewer risks. A $2 million game, if it bombs, you make another one. Effectively, you could make 40 $2 million games, and if they sold in the aggregate the same as one $80 million game, you were in good shape. And then occasionally they would get a hit. And most of that is graphics, but a lot of it is just that, it's not just, the graphics means more than just pixels on the screen. It means you can do more on the screen with multiple characters. So you saw the exact same phenomenon with movies. Movies used to be inexpensive back when you could pay actors a couple $1 million to be in a movie. When you're paying Chris Pratt $20 million to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, it's got to do pretty big box office. Those are the kind of movies that get made now, and it's the same thing in games. It costs so much that everybody wants to make the sure thing. So the last question you asked, how much of the profit is being reinvested in new IP? I mentioned on a prior answer, Rockstar signed a contract in 2009, February 2009, where the three guys that run Rockstar, one of them's gone now, but the Hausers and Los Benzes, own 49% of any new IP that Rockstar creates. And since February of 2009, Rockstar has produced exactly 0 new IP. Why is that? Because those guys aren't creative? Wrong. They are totally creative. But they're fully occupied working on the so-called sure things. The one company that's really gone all in is Ubisoft. So out of Ubisoft, and you can argue about whether Far Cry is new IP or not, but you've gotten a reinvented Ghost Recon, a reinvented Far Cry. They've come up with The Division, they've come up with Watch Dogs, they've come up with For Honor. So they are really doing great stuff. The other guy said it really too, Blizzard. And StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3 don't count because those are sequels. But, Hearthstone, pretty amazing. I mean, Heroes of the Storm, whether you like it or not, pretty good. Overwatch, phenomenal. So, they've had 3 big franchises. Ubisoft's had like 6. But name all the new franchises out of EA in the last 5 years. So new IP is just not something the Western guys do unless you're Ubisoft. So I'd say very little gets reinvested. The company I'm the most excited about, for new IP is Take-Two, because I think the Rockstar guys have an incentive, and I think they're so good that they'll probably come up with something that will delight consumers, but I don't know what it is. Our last question this week from Twitter at, great name, at RockHard80. Cliff Bleszinski, who's that? Cliff Bleszinski recently said that the AAA business model is unsustainable. Do you agree? Well, first of all, I have to say Cliff is a pretty smart dude, okay? But remember who Cliff is. Cliff is a guy who made AAA games forever, and now he's making Lawbreakers, right? Which is not a AAA free-to-play game, but it's not a AAA game. It's not a AAA console game. So Cliff made a pivot. Ken Levine, who made BioShock, cut his studio down from hundreds of people to 20 or 30 or whatever, and he's making, I think it's called Ghost Story Games. He's doing something that way too. It's really impossible for a startup independent to do it. You need to be really well capitalized. Bungie pulled it off. They split off from Microsoft. They pulled it off because Activision funded it. Gearbox has pulled it off. I mean, their Epic has pulled it off when Cliff worked there. Not Respawn. Since. Yeah, Respawn, funded by EA, has pulled it off. I don't know what Cliff actually means, so I don't want to disagree with him because I love him. He's a super good guy, super smart, and really talented. I think he means, I'm Cliff. I don't have $80 million to invest in a game, and I need to raise money. If I'm gonna self-fund, I've got to make a smaller game. Lawbreakers looks amazing, but it's not, a full-blown console experience, and it's certainly not costing him $80 million to make. So I think he's talking about how the risk entailed in making an $80 million game is so great that you're going to get fewer and fewer of them, and that kind of goes back to the prior question about few risks taken by the publishers and new IP. So I do agree that we're going to have fewer and fewer, and it takes deep pockets to make a game like that. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, fellow babies, on SIFTD.net. We're happy if you're a member, and if you're not, you can join anytime. We welcome the membership. It's a great site for curating cool content, and you get some Pach loving. If you're watching for free on YouTube, that's cool too, because I want to share my wisdom with everybody. Would appreciate a follow on Twitter at Michael Pachter if you're not following me, and I promise people who follow me get their questions answered on the Pachter Factor. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.